Welcome to Lesson 3 in our Java tutorial series. What you're going to be creating in this project is a temperature converter. It's going to convert Fahrenheit to Celsius. And along the way, we're going to be covering quite a few other things as well. So let's review what we've done up to this point, and I'll show you what's different in this program. So back in Lesson 1, we created our first class, and that class was called Hello World. It represented the entire program. Inside that class was a single method called the main method, and that just tells the computer program where to start. So it starts on the first line of the main method and begins executing downwards sequentially. And we put in a couple of different commands. We just outputted text to the screen. We did show how to do an if-else decision structure because we've covered those things in the past with other programming languages, and also a looping structure, one that repeats instructions. So we did a for loop as well. So we printed hello world like 100 times. Then finally we compiled this program. We didn't have any bugs at that time, but that would be another step in the process. And then finally we ran it. We did get the opportunity in Lesson 2 to do that debugging stage where we had an error, we had to fix it, and then recompile and run it again. So Lesson 2's main objective was to manipulate a whole bunch of variables. So we had a bunch of round number integer type data to manipulate that would say your current age is this, and in the year 2035 and the year 2050 you're going to be this old and that old. So super easy, but it showed us how we can use variables, manipulate variables, and output some more data. So since we can do those things now, we're going to output them a little differently. The first two lessons put the output in the console. In this lesson, we're going to put them in Windows. So since we're bringing that up, our first objective is to now work with not just round numbers, those were the integers from lesson 2. We're also going to work with strings, so that's a sequence of characters all strung together. Think of that as like a sentence or a phrase. Doubles, and you can think of that as like a decimal value of something, and floating point numbers. So we're going to work with all that, and we're also going to be popping these things up in windows for the user to input data, and then we're going to also have another window that gives us data back after we've processed it. So that's a lot of stuff. So let's go ahead and show you a demonstration of what it's going to look like. So here's my command prompt window, and I'm going to change the directory to the desktop. So cd desktop. That changed the directory for me. And now that I'm in my desktop, I'm going to type path C, and I'm going to start typing program files, but again, I'm going to use the tab key to autocomplete. Just replace the double quotation mark with a backslash and then continue. So JDK and bin semicolon, and then the modulus or the percent sign, path, and another modulus. Then I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning here, and because I was using the tab autocomplete, I got to take out that double quote right before the C. So I'm going to hit enter. That now allows me to run Java commands from this directory. So then I'm going to use the Java compile tool, that's Java C, to run my program, which I'm calling temperature converter.java. Alright, so that compiled with no problems, and it made some bytecode for me over here. So now to run it, I have to use the word Java, so that basically means run, and then use the name of the class that I'm going to run. So temperature converter contains a main method, so it's runnable. So I'm going to go ahead and type temperature converter, and I get a pop-up window. So this window is asking me to enter a temperature in Fahrenheit. I'm going to say that it's 72 degrees, and I'm going to click OK. Then I get that window to close and a new window to pop up that says Celsius temperature is 22 and Fahrenheit temperature is 72. So there's my conversion. Now, it takes a lot to get to that point, so let's go ahead and code it up. So I'm going to go ahead and shrink that down, and I'm going to open up my notepad. Okay, so to get into this pop-up window stuff, Java makes it really easy. There's actually pre-made libraries for making windows, and we're going to use both of the libraries that are available. I'm going to show you the first one. The first one is older. It's called, and I'm going to use the import statement to bring it in and use it. So this is all pre-made code, reusable code that we can take advantage of. So we're going to begin by typing import java.awt.star, semicolon. So what this means is I'm accessing the Java library, and AWT stands for Abstract Window Toolkit. So there's an entire library of methods and procedures that will help us build windows. And the newer version of that is called java.swing, I'm sorry, javax.swing. And the star indicates that I want everything in the library. So when I said .star, I want everything that it comes with. All right, so those are the two import statements that are going to be above our class. And again, it's pre-made code, totally free. We can use it at will. So next, we're going to have to make our class. So our class is going to be called public class temp converter. And I'm going to set up a pair of curly braces. So I have a left curly brace here at the end of line 4 and a right curly brace at line 6. But I'm going to need more space than that, so I'm going to go ahead and space it out. And now that is my container. The name of this program is going to be temp converter. I need to save it as tempconverter.java. So you can see I have that all set up right up here. You can click File, Save As, tempconverter.java, and then click Save. So now I'm saving over the old one that I just had, and we're going to build it all from scratch. All right, so now I need a main method that's going to actually run this thing. So I'm going to say public static void main string args, a set of square brackets, and then another set of curly braces. Now I've already explained what these words mean in the previous tutorials, so I'm just going to keep moving on from this point. Alright, so here's a new variable for us, string. Now notice it does start with the uppercase S, so that means there's an entire class. So string is actually an object, and in Java everything is an object. But this tells me that there are methods that are going to go with whatever I put next, unlike the integer variable that we used in the last lesson. The integer variable does have a helper class, but it's just a value when we created it. So this one's going to be string, and let's just call it Fahrenheit. Oops. Fahrenheit, and we'll just say Fahrenheit string so that later on we know what we're working with. Next, we're going to say string output. So that's just what we're going to output to the screen. And another type of variable that we're going to declare here is called double. Think of this as a decimal value, so like 1.5 or 27.3. So those would be examples of a double. All right, so our temperature is going to be stored as a double value. And since we have Fahrenheit, we also need Celsius. All right, so those are our declarations up top. Now what we're going to do is we're going to actually set the value of Fahrenheit string by asking for it in a pop-up window. So to do that, I have to say that Fahrenheit string, and I'm going to auto-complete here, is going to take the value of a J option pane. And where that's coming from is the AWT library. All right, so that's already a pre-built thing that I can just have pop up anytime I want to. Okay, and then one of the methods of the J option pane is show input dialog. So that was the OK button and the cancel button. Now whatever I put in these two quotes is what it's going to ask. So I'm going to say enter a temperature in Fahrenheit. And then I'm going to put a colon and finish out with a semicolon. Okay, at that point, now that I'm going to set that string, it's still just a set of characters. I can't actually perform mathematics on it until I convert it into a mathematical number like a double. So that's what the Fahrenheit up here, cast as a double, is going to do. So let's go ahead and put that in. So I'm going to say Fahrenheit is going to take the value of, and here I'm going to use a helper class. Actually, I don't need parentheses. So double is a helper class that will turn this string into a double value. So parse double Fahrenheit string. Okay, and now that I have Fahrenheit as a number value, I can calculate what Celsius is going to be. So I'm going to say Celsius takes the value of Fahrenheit minus 32.0, and I have to put the 0.0 because we're talking about double values. And I'm going to multiply that by the fraction 5/9, which is actually going to be 5.0 divided by 9.0 with a semicolon at the end. So that's our Celsius conversion. All right, now that we have that, we're going to output that into another window. So let me show you what a J-frame is. So think of a J-frame as like if you have a picture frame hanging on the wall, that's what a J-frame is. It's the frame around the picture. So we're going to have to have a frame, and we're going to have something in the frame, like the picture itself. So that'll be our container coming up next. So I'm going to call this J-frame J, and it's going to be a new J-frame. Now, whatever I put in the quotes here is going to be the title of the window. So here I'm just going to call it my temperature converter. So that is the title. And like I said, that's just the outer frame. It's the window, but it's empty. So now we have to have a container. So I'm going to put a container inside there. And I'm going to call the container C. And I'm going to set it equal to this J, or that's an instance of the J frame, J.get content pane. Okay. Next, I'm going to take this instance of this container, which I've nicknamed C, and set the background color. So when I say set background, whatever I put in parentheses is going to become the color. So color is also a class. Notice the uppercase C. And I'm going to say it's going to be dark gray. Okay, next we're going to set the layout to be flow layout. So that's going to be new flow layout. And actually I'm going to need some parentheses there. All right, just like we've worked with other programming languages like in Visual Studio, we've worked with labels. Labels are for text. So we're going to make two labels for the output, and they're called JLabels, as in a Java label. So JL, ABEL, if I can spell that right. And my Fahrenheit label, I'm just going to call it FLBL. And it's going to be a new J label. Now, whatever I put in quotes here is what it's going to say. So I'm going to say my Fahrenheit temperature is going to be equal to, and then I'm going to concatenate on the integer version of Fahrenheit. So Fahrenheit right now is a double, which means it's going to give us a decimal value every single time. I'm going to round that by doing something called casting. So what I put in here is I'm casting as an int this double, and I'm actually going to round it too, just to be safe. So I'm going to say math.round, and I'm going to put in my Fahrenheit double value. All right, so just to kind of review here, whatever this comes up with as a double value, I'm converting it to an integer. All right, and at the end of this, I'm going to go ahead and hit a semicolon. Now I basically need another label just like that, but it's for my Celsius temperature. So I'm going to copy this whole line and paste it, but I'm just going to change that F to a C in order to change what the label is. Then here I'm going to say this is my Celsius temperature, and instead of Fahrenheit over here, I'm going to change this to Celsius. Okay, so now I have two labels made. The color of the labels, I don't want the default color. I want it to actually stick out and have a lot of contrast against the dark gray background. So I'm going to make the, let's make the Celsius label, I have to set the foreground. So that's basically the color of the text, is the foreground color. And from the color class, let's make it yellow. Okay, and the Fahrenheit label. So the Fahrenheit label, we're going to set its foreground to the color orange, just so that they're different from one another. All right, next we're going to throw in some floating point numbers. Now, most graphics here is going to involve some sort of floating point stuff, so just get used to it. So this Celsius label, the C label, we're going to set the font of it. Now the font, we can just use the default font. We just want to change the size of it because it's going to be tiny in the box if we don't. So I'm going to say, go ahead and get the font that we already have, clabel.getFont. And then I want to derive it. So I want to derive from that font a 36.0 floating point size. All right, so that's going to increase our font from somewhere around 10 or 12 point font up to 36 point font. And I want to do that same thing, so I'm going to copy this whole line for the Fahrenheit label. Except for the Fahrenheit label, I'm going to make half as tall. And by the way, 36 point font is usually about a ½ inch tall, whereas 72 is an inch, 36 is a ½ inch, 18 here would be a 1/4 inch tall, It's just a kind of a rule of thumb. Okay. Next, we have to take these things and we have to actually add them to the container, and the container is part of the JFrame. So there's kind of a hierarchy here. So I need to add, so I'm going to take C, which represents the container, and add to it the Celsius label. And the order does matter here because I want the Celsius to be on top. After all, we are converting to Celsius. And then I'm going to add the Fahrenheit label, just like that. All right, lastly, I have to take this JFrame and I'm going to take its instance and set the bounds of it. What this means is the size. So the bounds is going to be 300 by 300, 500. This is the width, by the way, 500, and then 250 pixels tall. Okay. Next, I'm going to take this instance and set the default close operation, because this thing is going to continue to run even if we click that X button in the upper right hand corner of the window. It doesn't actually shut down the program unless we tell it to. So we're going to have to do that. So set the default close operation for JFrame to be exit on close. All right. So when we do click the X on the window, it actually shuts down the program. And then this one will probably take you by surprise, is set visible to true. All right, so we wouldn't want our window to be hidden by default. We actually want to see it. So we're going to set its visibility to true. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save this now. And it's a good habit to make sure that you've got semicolons at the end of each line. So I'm just going to do kind of a quick scan for that. And then we're going to see if we made any debugging errors. So now I'm going to shrink that down. I'm going to go back and recompile this thing. And we just typed that whole thing error-free. So let's go ahead and run it. So the run command is Java and then temp converter. All right, now we get our pop-up window. I'm going to say 72 again. And the conversion from 72 in Fahrenheit is 22 in Celsius. So that's the complete program. Once you have that built, go ahead and turn it in on the Google Classroom. If you have any questions, see me in class.